Bring your camera down, Danielle. All right. Danielle, you there?
I am. Hello.
Doesn't that get you pumped?
It does. It does. That had a really good ring to it.
Yeah, I know that's some special stuff there. Again, shout out to Stacy and Elise for helping put that together. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome again to our masterclass of leadership. As you guys know, we do this every Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Central. And we have been able to cover some really, really great topics, over the last 12 weeks. And I really think that anybody that's in any phase of leadership of our business should be listening into these calls and should be taking notes because, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks now, every part of the year for our business is great, but this time specifically is really special because of college graduates, because, typically studies have shown that people look to change careers or change jobs around the summertime. And, I know that everybody that's looking to move up in our business, I needed so much coaching. I needed so much development. I needed to network like crazy. And Dallas meetings was the biggest meeting of my career when I was going through the training program. And I hit it like 4 or 5 months in. and it was for, 2 days. And that had so much impact. So for you guys, what's really great is every week you guys essentially get a Dallas meeting, where you get to hear from some of the top owners in our business. Some of them have become regionals, national consultants. Some of them are rookie owners or very new in ownership. But the cool thing about this is they're talking about what's specifically working for them in their offices, in their organizations. And obviously there are people who were just in leadership. Some of them were just, but some of them, all of them have been in leadership at some phase of our business. So they can really relate to whatever it is you're going through. So very excited about today's speakers. You guys know last week we had Helen. She talked about second round interviews. Next week we have Bud, which I can't wait to hear from Bud. But today, Danielle, we are very, very excited to hear from her and her topic. She's going to be talking about, leadership development, or actually having the right relationship with your people and how to develop leaders properly, which I know was my biggest struggle going through the program, was how to talk to people, how to discipline them properly, how to get them to get things done without them thinking I'm some asshole. So anyways, very, very excited about today's topic. But Danielle, your story is really great. I thought I was from a small town, but you're from a way smaller town. And the town is called Boonville, right? And
Yep.
It's not to be confused with Boone. So your background's interesting. You have been working from a very young age, and you've been managing from a very young age. So can you talk about like what you're doing before the business and how that translated into you wanting to get into this industry?
Yeah, for sure. So I've only ever had 2 other positions before this business. I worked at McDonald's. I started that when I was 16. Got fed up with fast food, and then I started working at a manufacturing company. And I got into management 8 months into working at this place, and I was working there for 3 years, third shift, from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. And of course it was salary. So, I was working 13 hours a night, and most of the time they had meetings the next morning, but that didn't matter because it was salary. Right. And
Yep.
I was looking around me at everybody who had my same management title, and, they had been there for 40, 50 years. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I only have one life to live. I don't want to wait 50 years for a promotion. And what they considered a promotion was just going to daytime with my same management title. And I was thinking, okay, wow. So I just ventured out. I needed something more. I knew I had more potential than just that small town. I just felt bigger than that. So I ventured out, found this business.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, you say you worked at McDonald's, but what you didn't say was that you moved up to, you were managing the whole store, the whole restaurant by the age of 18. And you did that for 3 or 4 years. And then,
Yeah.
you went into another company in manufacturing and you became a manager. So, it seems like you've always had this sort of maturity about you, even from a young age. And so, you did that for a while where you were working for some companies on a salary with no growth, and you got fed up, right? So you looked around what was out there and you ran into this business. What attracted you about this business that maybe you didn't get from the other ones? And what made you go through the field and have to go through all the ups and downs and then get through it to be where you are now?
I'm very competitive, and I like a challenge. For some reason, I just really love being told that I can't do something. And so whenever I came into this business, I'm not going to lie, I felt way overqualified to be, I came into roadshows, right? So I was standing inside of a Sam's Club with a hair iron, and I felt overqualified. My first day, I was thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell, and my promoting owner was in the field with me, and she said, we were doing what we did. And I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to tell her that, I'm going to look for other jobs? That was my genuine thought on my first day. And she was like, yeah, I get it. Not everybody wants to work this hard. And I was like, no, I don't mind hard work. And she was like, oh, okay. I mean, sure, if you can't do it, that's fine. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So then that competitive nature just really came out in me. And then I just started to see a change in myself and my confidence. And, I got into leadership in 8 days. So then I was like, oh, wait, okay, this growth is actually in my control, which I've never experienced that before either. My growth has always been in the hands of somebody else deciding when I can move up and not. So I really love being in control of that too.
Well, that's great. And your story's amazing. You started in roadshows, and I think you started in the summer of 2018. You got promoted in 9 months. You became an owner. And so during 2019 is when you first opened up your business. You were growing, you were starting to build momentum. And like what happened to all of us, COVID happened, right? So you went from, managing 20 people, really figuring out management, and then you went down to 2. So there was kind of like this, it was like a fork in the road where it was like, all right, what am I going to do with my career? I worked really hard to get what I have, and now it's kind of all falling apart. And so I'm sure that was a tough moment for you. And you were telling me about a conversation you had with Jessica Vitalik, who, she's overseeing 50 plus offices, just doing a huge job. And you came from road shows, and then you talked to her about getting into door to door. So how was that conversation, and what happened thereafter?
Full transparency, she said, we don't know when roadshows is going to be a thing again. We know you're shut down. So there's an opportunity to, take on water ready refresh going door to door. Do you want to jump on that? And full transparency, in the back of my mind, I was like, no, hell no. Like, I don't want to go door to door. But, then we kind of talked about it. We talked about, what the opportunity was, and, the payout on it. And, you can either stay shut down or, jump on this. And I said, you know what, let's go. I can't sit here anymore. I just said, we gotta grow. I only have one life to live. So
Yeah.
I jumped on a plane and went to Dallas and got trained for a week in Richard's office with one of my 2 guys, and came back and started building it.
That's awesome. And you've always been a hard worker since you were young, and you've applied it to this business. And even though you had management background, you humbled yourself, and you came in, and then you had to humble yourself again once you got ownership to rebuild it. So where do you think that stems from? Like, because most people, when they're young, they don't want to work hard. And when things get rough, they'd rather take the easy route. Where do you think that sort of determination comes from?
I think a lot of it has to do with my mom. She's always worked really hard, to make everything great for my sister and I. And, kind of instilled that in me, like we didn't just sit around like, hey, if we're not doing something, we need to be helping with chores. If it's pretty outside, we need to go play, like just always be moving, always be doing something. And, and again, the competitiveness in me is just, I want to be the best. I want to be the best. It doesn't matter who I have to network with. If it's somebody newer who's just happens to be better than me at something, I'm going to talk to them, and then I'm going to get better than them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting is our business tends to attract people who just really hate to lose. They hate they hate being told they can't, like you said. And then it kind of becomes like their chip, along with all the other motivations we have. But their chip is to be like, I can do this. Someone tells me, if someone else is doing it, why can't I do it? And obviously you've been a great example of that. Well, your situation, you came back from COVID, you've rebuilt your whole office, and now you're passing along the opportunity. You had your first promotion, so congratulations. First day in sales today, KDG in Raleigh, so shout out to her. And you get another promotion, TK Truitt. I know that's her nickname, but she's also getting promoted here coming up soon. So a lot of exciting stuff happening. And Danielle, your topic today is like developing the right relationships with leaders, So why don't you bring up your slide and let's get into this thing.
Okay.
And I know for everybody that's listening, like obviously our business is about being the right example, and being the right example is where it all starts. But the next step of that is to make sure that the people that you have on your team from day one, you're really setting the tone and you're developing that right relationship. So there we go. All right, Danielle, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay, cool. And everybody can see this. Did I do this right?
Okay. They can't respond, but I will say, yes, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, good deal. So, just talking about developing leaders and, how to build the right relationships in order to retain people. This is something that I really struggled with, because I was kind of selfish in a sense, to where I just wanted to build people to move myself forward. It was kind of like the checklist. I just wanted to check off the checklist and get through it as quickly as possible. And, So I wanted to develop leaders, I really did, but it was for the wrong reasons. It was for my own growth and not for theirs. So I had a really hard time retaining people and being able to build the right kind of relationship with them, it's just to help them to see value in what we did and what we do. So, kind of where it starts is with building the relationship. You want to find what they find valuable, because everybody has a different perspective on success, right? Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. So the first thing I like to do is, you want to find out what they want to improve on personally, not necessarily from a business standpoint, just, as a person, like just to be a better husband, wife, spouse, daughter, son, what skill set do they want to improve on personally just to be a better person? So whether it's like communication skills, time management. I know I had a really hard time with time management going through it, through the MIT process, because, I had a boyfriend and like a lot of you can probably relate to, he was saying, okay, well, I never get to see you anymore. I didn't get to see you a lot because we both worked, but now it's just almost impossible for us to, see each other and spend the time that we used to spend together. And so time management was a really big thing for me, because when I came in, I put everything I had into the business, and, I was waking up at 7 a.m., going to sleep at 10 p.m. And, I left no room for anything else. So, that was something that I really struggled with, and I didn't realize I had an issue with it until, he brought it up, and then that made me want to network about it. So, even things that people don't know that they, are struggling with, it's like, okay, well, here, let me help you with that because I've been through it. Money management, I don't know if you guys have ever met that type of person that, like, whether they make $1,000 a week or $20,000 a week, they just still have no money, because their spending habits are just that bad. They're just like, oh, I have $1. What can I buy for $1? So like just getting better at money management, and whether that's, personal or business or anything. So, and then self accountability. In my last position, sure, I was a manager, but I would like plan my meetings the night before, and then I would show up like right when it was time to be there. I would like roll out of bed. I would hit that snooze button like crazy. So I had a really hard time with self accountability. And at my last position there at the manufacturing company, they were just like, oh, that's just Danielle. Like here, it can't just be Danielle, like you have to develop those habits, and I had to be willing to change to do that. So, that's another stuff. A lot of these things I had to really work on myself. Self-education, teaching them where to go to find answers for things. Giving them books to read, or if they're not a big reader, audio books and things like that. Like, what do they want to get better at? What's important to them versus what do I want to teach you in the business to make me grow? That was my perspective that I really had to work on. And then the next thing, what aspect of the business excites them the most? So, what's exciting to people, for some people, sales is really exciting. Whether they want to improve their confidence, just going out and talking to people. I've met, I've had so many introverts come into the business, and, they freeze up and they get nervous, just to talk to people. But, that's really exciting to some people, because they're like, well, I want to improve on this, see what excites them, because you want to know what's going to motivate them and how you can coach them in that way. And then, leadership, just being somebody that people can go to without getting stressed out, or, getting excited when people need help and they want to come to you for the answers. I know the first time somebody ever networked with me, I was like, me? Stop. Like, I felt so special, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm getting this leadership thing down. So, that was super exciting for me. And then management, learning how to manage multiple things at one time. And training, I was really excited about training, because I thought I had it down pat, because I had been in management, since I was 18. So I had a kind of an ego when it came to this area. I was like, oh, I can train somebody, I can talk to somebody. And but then the very first person that I ever trained, I know I ended up calling, like we were doing bed sheets, like luxury bedding, in Costco. And, we wanted to have a downward inflection. So it wasn't like we were asking a question, so we could, to sound confident. And this guy, it was his first day. It was his first day in the field, my first trainee ever. And I called my mentor, I called Rabija, and I said, hey, I'm going to send this person home. He just can't have a downward inflection. I ended up recording this guy and saying, do you hear you? Do you hear me? Are you not capable? Sounding like me. I crushed this guy's poor spirit. But I talked to Rabija and I said, listen, I'm going to send this guy home. Like, he's just awful. And she said, okay, well, wait a minute, hold on, let's back up. What is he doing well? And I just didn't have the patience to train like I thought I did. And I said, he is doing nothing right. Like, there is nothing that this guy is doing correctly. And she said, okay, well, is he straight arming? And I said, well, yeah, but straight arm,
Yeah.
So what, and so she said, okay, so maybe we want to work on building them a little bit more, like get their confidence up, treat them as a partner, instead of like an employee. And then that was a really hard mindset for me to switch, being in management for that long. But then I'm a very extreme person. So, whenever I get feedback for doing one thing, I go to the opposite end of the spectrum. So the very next person that I trained, I built them a little bit too much. And when I say that, I said, hey, you're doing great. This is great. And then it was their first solo day. They called me to break down their day. And she said, oh, it was a phenomenal day. Everything was great. I presented to this many people. I closed on this many people. And I said, awesome. How many sales did you make? And she said, well, I didn't make any sales, but today was great. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I called Rabija and I was like, she did great. And she was like, no, that's not great. So, it always took me 3 times to do something. I would do something on this end of the spectrum, and then I would be extreme on the other end. And then the third time I would get it about right, but, with practice still. And then with recruiting, kind of the same thing. That's what excited me the most, because I had never really done a lot of recruiting on a serious level for any business before. So like my excitement, it was really hard for me to contain that. So my very first interview, I went in there and I was like, hi, I'm Danielle, go ahead and come on back. We'll get you a job. Like, no fear of loss, no Fuji. Like, it was just like, and then everybody was just like, okay, and then of course, after I got feedback, my next interview was like, why should I hire you?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? Like, so like completely fluffy to completely cold. And then, just working on that. And so like just finding out what aspect like they are most excited about. And then, coaching them on that versus again, what you want them to learn just to get you where you want to be.
Yes. I got a question. So,
yes.
I think like when a lot of people start, and guys, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We want to make sure we get any questions answered. I know when a lot of people start, you said you had a problem with like using your goals to coach people. Like you were already imagining where this person was going to be for your help, right? Or for what you wanted. So what's that like? Let's say you go over someone's goals and you figure out what's important to them. Let's say they say, hey, I'm really here because I want to make money. I want to gain experience in sales and maybe move up. What happens when you see them doing things that are sort of counterintuitive to the things they told you? How do you go about those conversations? And how do you use their goals against them?
So I just remind them. I'm just like, hey, so you want to address it first? Like, hey, maybe you showed up late or, you didn't show up to a one-on-one. It's like, hey, like, that's perfectly fine. Don't attack them like they are your partner, right? So you don't want to attack them, but you want to say, hey, listen, like, I remember you telling me that you wanted to accomplish X, Y, Z. So, and remember, like, I asked you if you wanted me to hold you accountable, and you said yes. So, what do you think I'm thinking right now? And I just kind of lead them to the answer. I make them kind of, I help them to kind of come to the conclusion like, oh, wait, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. And it also seems like the best time to have these conversations, or at least to set the tone, is early on, right? So I know when someone first gets started, on their first day of orientation, obviously you want to be warm, you want to be welcoming, but you want to have that conversation where you discuss, I know you're about to go into it, like what your relationship is with them. And then that one-on-one, that dinner that we talk about all the time, like that we call like the solo dinner, but I think a lot of leaders wait too long to have that. And that's one of the most important meetings you can have, because that's where you can fish out red flags. You can identify like what really this person's like. You can see them in a different element outside of the office. And then you can really figure out, okay, what's the most important thing to them? What are their hot spots? And then you use those hot spots as your conversation starters when things aren't going well throughout training and throughout their first couple of weeks, because we know, in the first 2 to 4 weeks, everyone's kind of dating here. They're trying us out. We're trying them out. So you really want to be as educated as you possibly can about the people that you bring on your team, because the more you know about them, the more powerful you can be when it comes to topics or critical conversations, things like that. So I know, like me and you were talking even before the call, how important those initial relationship building sessions are, whether they're one-on-ones or whether they're in the office. So I just thought that was a great point you made. So, all right, continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to set the tone early on. Otherwise, it gets watered down as you go. And then, you pop up with a critical conversation where you didn't actually set that tone, and they're like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
And it makes them, really defensive, and, they're just confused.
Mm-hmm.
Confused mind always says no. So,
Yep.
And so like, going into this is like, you really want to explain your role. So I guess whenever we, set the tone of the relationship, like they need to know what your role is exactly. So, you are a business partner, and this took me a minute to be able to wrap my head around what this is actually like to be a part of. Like because of a business partner, like, in corporate America, you go in, you have a manager, there's a chain of command, like you do what you're told by this person. If you're a manager, then you tell this person what to do, they do it, it's their job. So, it's just different to be a part of a business partnership where it's 50-50. And so you're not a boss, and that took me a minute to realize. You're not a boss of anybody, but you're also not a friend of anybody. So just finding that medium balance. Like I said, I'm a very extreme person. So I started out as a boss, then I ended up as a friend. And then, so whenever I would try to give feedback to somebody who I have, kind of made a friend out of, just trying not to boss them around, to just like help them, they did not take that very well. They were like, hey, well, who are you to tell me? And It's like, well, I am your mentor. And so I just being able to explain your role, like on a good level. And like what you are is you're a mentor, you're a business partner, you're someone who holds them accountable, to their own goals. So like you said before, if they do something that kind of counteracts what they're after, and, goes against something that's going to get them to their goals, then it's like, hey, remember you told me that you wanted to accomplish this. Well, I'm here to hold you accountable to that. And that's not going to get you where you want to be. So what can we do to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
And on top of reaching your own goals, like along that comes with that is just like the standard. So you share responsibility, of standards that are set that you agree upon to build solid leadership habits and qualities that'll be transferred to their own team. So, as far as leadership habits, like, hey, if I'm late, call me out. If you're late, I'm going to call you out. Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So that way people aren't getting defensive, and it's not out of left field when you have these conversations with them, because they already know what your role is and, what the relationship looks like.
Yeah. It also, like when we think about the strongest relationships we have in our lives, whether it's, with our parents or, with coaches or whoever we really respect, the word respect is there, but also like the way that relationship becomes strong is because, sometimes you get in fights, sometimes you disagree, or there's critical conversations where you're discussing something really uncomfortable, and everybody, handles those differently. So it's kind of like you have to know the person you're dealing with and how to go into that tough topic. But this was like the thing I was afraid of the most, was having tough conversations. We learn the most about each other during our bad days. And so the same thing happens, guys, when you're coaching your people, is you're going to build the strongest bonds when you discuss the toughest topics, when things aren't going good, is really where you can turn the corner with those people. So Danielle, like, what was your mindset like when you were new and maybe you weren't comfortable with these conversations? What did you do to prepare for critical conversations? And then after they happened, or either during, how did you approach them to make sure that you would get the most out of it, so that way you could get the most out of your people?
So I just networked. I networked about almost every single conversation I would have. If I didn't get a hold of anybody before I had to have the conversation, I would have the conversation, then I would network afterwards. And I'd be like, hey, so this is what I said. This is what their face did. This is what they said to me. What just happened? Because I messed up a lot of conversations. And then, for the times where I said the completely wrong thing, I would go back to that person and be like, hey, so remember how we talked about that? Yeah, I'm so sorry. Whoops.
Yes.
This is actually what I meant to say whenever I said that. So I just networked about everything. And after a while, because my conversations were so structured, like I felt like I had to follow a structure. So they were horrible. And they were just like, okay, I'm a human. Try talking to me like you're not a robot, So after a while, I just started being completely transparent. I remember one of the harder conversation I had to have was with someone who was a little bit more experienced than me in the business. I had to have a conversation with them, and I networked about it, and they said, just tell them that you're uncomfortable. And I was just like, hey, like, I'm really super uncomfortable having this conversation because I really appreciate your mentorship. You've taught me so much. So this is really awkward for me. And, whatever you don't want to happen in the conversation, just like saying that out loud. You're like, hey, I don't want you to take this way. I don't want you to think that I'm attacking you. Whatever you think that could come of it, that you like, something that you don't desire to come out of the conversation, say that out loud and preempt it. It makes you so much more human.
Yeah. Well, I took away two things. Number one, the thing you did really well was, especially when you're a new leader, you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of like being a cook, and the first time you learn how to cook, you're going to burn some things, you're going to undercook it, you're going to mess up your first few meals. Eventually you're going to get good, but you really networked. And I think it's so important for people that are building teams. When you have people on your crew and you're noticing something's wrong, like, really get with your manager and give them updates on what's going on. And there's a lot of conversations that I had to watch for a couple times to really see how my owner interacted with that person, how they adapted to them quickly and then adjusted. And then, somehow, some way, it went from really bad to really good at the end. And I'm like, wow, that was like a magic trick, but it's really not magic. It's just something that I didn't understand. Right. And the other thing, Danielle, that I noticed that you really sort of, you said that, hey, I'm uncomfortable. I think one of the most important things for a leader to do when they're having tough conversations is to admit where they're wrong too. Right. And say, hey, this is where I screwed up to get us to this point as well. So if you never say, hey, my bad, or I'm sorry, and all you're doing is saying, hey, what you did wrong, people are way less likely to listen and way less likely to respect you. Right. So I know that you talked about having humility going into conversations to the point where people will really look at you and say, wow, this person's willing to call themselves out. I'm going to be way more open-minded to what they're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So good stuff. All right. Well, let's move on to the next slide.
Okay. And so for conversations, it was just the most awkward thing for me because like I said, I was just entirely too structured. Like we always say, like, address, relate, educate, set the standard. And like, it was so choppy that you could tell when I was addressing, you could tell when I was relating. And it was really hard for me to make it like a casual conversation because I wanted it to be so perfect. And I learned really quick that that's just not how it goes. So the one main thing that really helped with retention is asking for feedback from your guys. And it goes such a long way because, whether it's the first day, the first week, the first, after their first month, just doing it often, and it needs to be in person, set them down and say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your experience with us? And how would you rate my mentorship? and if they say, it's a 10, then okay, great. What makes you say that? Like really dig in, say, hey, like what can we be continuing to make you say 10? If it's an 8, okay, awesome. What have we been doing well that has made you say 8? And then what can we improve on to push that up to a 10 for your experience here? And, whether you agree or not, like that doesn't matter. Like you're there to get their feedback because you are business partners, right? It's 50-50. And if you let them know and show them, so you want to do it in person and you want to write it down, you have to write it down in front of them, their feedback that they give you. Good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. So you want to be writing that down. And like I've done it a couple times, and people will actually slow down for you so that you can finish writing. And by doing that, I know it's kind of at the bottom there, but it just shows them that the door is open for them to give me feedback, and they're gonna open the door for all the negatives that they're experiencing instead of keeping it to themselves, being a no call, no show, going and writing a bad review. They're gonna feel a lot more open to share their negatives because they're being heard. So I do that, from day one, week one, making sure that, you're showing them how to write down feedback and how to take feedback, showing them that student mentality that you have and being the example in that way. Because then whenever you give them feedback, they're going to most likely, when they see you do it enough, they're going to do the exact same thing. And it's going to be a lot easier to coach this person. They're going to appreciate it a lot more. And for every conversation that we ever have with anybody is meant to do it, is meant to help. I wouldn't have a conversation with somebody if I didn't care about them. I had a coach that said, don't be afraid whenever I come to have a conversation with you. Be afraid whenever I stop having conversations with you, because then I don't care anymore. So, the only purpose that we ever have a conversation with anybody is to help. And whether it's developmental, critical, even, when we're having a conversation that might be an up or off conversation, it's like, hey, you're in here, you're not really performing, you're not making any money. Like, I don't want to hold you back from pursuing something where you could be successful, where you could really thrive. So any conversation is there to help, whether it's, hey, this might, we might not work out, or, hey, we need to fix this, because I don't want your image in the office to be you're late every day. I don't want people to see you like that. I know you're better than that. I see your potential. I hired you on, right? Like, you wouldn't be here if I didn't see that. So what can we do to make your image better? Like anything that, we are a people building people business. Like we are in the people, we are in the business developmental, business of people building people. And, it doesn't make sense to not have those conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are. There was a conversation that I was helping my leader have the other day, and they said, well, they're late, but I don't want to say anything. I don't want them to get mad. And, I've felt that before. Trust me, there have been several times where, I didn't want to have a conversation with somebody because I thought they were going to, lash back out at me, or, something like that. But if they understand that the only reason you're having the conversation is to help them, then, they're just so much more receptive. And then once you start having those conversations, you have to keep following through with the accountability. So once you have a conversation with somebody, you have to keep having the conversation until it becomes a habit, because, people come into the business with bad habits. I mean, I hit snooze every single day for like 15 times before I rolled out of bed. I had to fix that about myself. But it's kind of like, when you get married and you say, hey, I love you on your wedding day, like, you have to keep saying it. It doesn't just, oh, I love you, and so we're good for the rest of our lives. Like, no, you have to keep working on it. You have to keep developing those habits. So just like, don't be afraid to follow through and be transparent with that. And then, it kind of going back to the ask for feedback, like show them the business partnership and the open door for transparency. And then ask them, be like, hey, are you completely fine with me being transparent with you? Do you want me to sugarcoat this, or do you want me to give it to you straight up? And I haven't had anybody say yet that they want it to be sugarcoated. They're like, no, give it to me straight up. So then you kind of have, free range, and that's where the relationship really gets tight, because, you're able to give them the feedback that they really need, and not have to really hold back because they gave you permission, right? It's like, hey, this is what we need to do. What's our game plan? And then you can be really straight up with people and transparent with them. And then they're also transparent with you, and then maintaining the respect level, like, as you go.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to ask some questions, but please feel free to throw some questions in the chat. So I think when it comes to conversations and retention, I think that one of the biggest mistakes leaders make is they try to retain everybody. And I get the concept, like you want a bunch of people on your team. But one of the biggest negatives of our business, and this isn't just in leadership, this is in ownership, is when people hold on to the wrong people for too long. And it's kind of like in the field when you're trying to turn a no into a yes, and you sit there and you're really trying to overturn 50 objections, and this person's just telling you they're not interested, right? People all the time, they tell us with their actions that this isn't going to be a good fit. So I'm sure for you, Danielle, you're competitive and you wanted to make everybody better, and you thought you could fix everybody just like me. So how did you go about it when you saw someone that it really wasn't a good fit? Like you tried, they tried, but they're kind of just lingering. And then you just got to really say, hey, this isn't a good fit. How did you go about that to make sure that they left on good terms?
I start out the conversation like, hey, how do you think you're doing? And then I ask them for, okay, well, why do you say that? What kind of facts do you have to back that up? If they think they're doing poorly, I still ask why. If they think they're doing great, I ask why. What facts do you have? And then, I share my perspective. I'm like, okay, well, these are the facts. This is your performance for the past week, the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And, we've made game plans, and I just don't see a lot of follow through. So, I understand that you want this, and like, I love you as a person, like, I think you're great. And, it's been a lot of fun, but I don't want to hold you back from pursuing something where you can actually really be successful. Like, that's not fair to you. And then, I go to the point like, hey, I don't want to be considered a liar. I don't want to tell you something like you're going to be, a business owner in 6 months. Like, I don't want to tell you that if I don't genuinely believe that. I feel like that would make me a really bad, shitty person. So, I don't want to tell you that, because based on your growth right now, that's not the track that you're on. Yep. So I think it would be better if we shake hands, part ways.
It's kind of like, it's tough to break up with people. And I think that, when in our business, you kind of fall in love because you fall in love with the idea of something happening and the concept of it. And the hardest part for me was breaking up with people and was saying, hey, this isn't a good fit. And what's interesting about, having those conversations is, you have to be ahead of them. Like you can't wait for that person to come to you and say, hey, I really don't think this is a good fit. You got to be monitoring the behavior of all of your people at all times. And when you have somebody that's showing you that they're not interested, all the buying signs are negative, all the signs of interest, they're not taking notes in the meeting, they're showing up, they look sloppy, they're not sending you their goals. Like, it's really important that you guys are the one having this conversation before they're having it with you, because the most important thing in our business is attitude. And when you have people in your business, you have people in your office that are excited, the worst thing you can do is allow someone that's not excited to be a part of that group, right? And I always was afraid of, oh my God, what if I piss them off? Well, what if I allow them to stay and they're pissed off? Is actually way worse. And when you guys get into the mindset of, I've got to be the one who has the breakup conversations before they have them with me, it's great, because you go into it, like you said, Danielle, and you said, hey, how do you think you're doing? And they go, well, I'm doing okay. Why? And all these negatives will spew out. And when you tell them, hey, I don't think this is working, 9 times out of 10, that person's going to agree with you. They're going to say, you're right, this isn't a good fit. But that one time, they're going to fight you, and they're going to say, no, I'll fix it. And now you've got this person that may become even stronger than ever. They may become your next business partner. But guys, like Danielle's saying, you can't wait to have these conversations. And by the way, if you think you're pissing them off by having them, they're going to not like you either way. If you don't have them, they're going to like you less. They're going to leave the business and think you wasted their time. but they're going to respect you way more by having these critical conversations with people early and often, and don't wait for the problem to get bigger, right? Make a mountain out of a molehill, and maybe it's a molehill, but let the person tell you it's not a big deal. So that's awesome. Okay, let's see if we got any questions in the chat. All right, we got a question here. How do you really know if a recruit isn't working out? Is it all performance based, or also coupled with a gut feeling, so to speak?
So I really just look at if they are meeting the standards of the office, and every office is different. So, just for example, it's not all performance based. So, somebody can come in and be absolutely crushing it, but if they come in and they're just a negative person, they're late, kind of like you said, they come in disheveled, I'm not here to find salespeople. I can find salespeople anywhere. I'm looking for business partners. I'm looking for somebody who I want to grow with and I want to trust. And so it just depends on what aspects you're looking at and what standards that are most important to you. If you're just an owner that's just okay with people showing up, like a minute or two late, or if you're an owner that's like, no, get out of my office, like you weren't on time. It just depends on like your core values of your office, but that's what I pay attention to most. If somebody comes in and they have phenomenal sales, but they lie to me, then, I have very little tolerance for, going against my core values of my office. So you just want to make sure that you have somebody who is, trying in all different aspects.
For sure.
If they're brand new, I look for student mentality, work ethic, and attitude. Are they actually reaching out? Like that's who I want to invest in. But if they're lacking in all three, then, you don't want to waste their time.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of people who have become extremely successful in our business that the sales they didn't pick up right away. Maybe it was outside their comfort zone, but they were such a good example. The way they carried themselves, they were mature. They took notes. They were professional. They were very courteous, and eventually those people, the sales of our business, in my opinion, I can teach anybody to sell as long as they really have the right mentality. But you're so right. Like, you see offices where the people that are in front of the room, they're the best in sales, but they're such a bad example in other ways. The way they talk to people, how they carry themselves. And so what the owner and what sometimes even leaders don't understand is that person, they're so good at sales, but they're turning everybody off, right? I've seen people that take people out in the field and they're great in sales, but they can't recruit anybody because no one looks at them and says, I want to become you, right? And I think that what you said is so important, that you're looking for those other characteristics as your barometer, right? So of course we want everything. We want the person that's a great example. We want the person that can set the pace. But I would say where the patience lies has to be depending on the person. And so, yeah, I'm sure, Danielle, you've had people that are great at setting the pace, but they lack professionalism, but you can work on it, right? And you see if they can change. You give them chances to change. And our business is full of people taking chances on people. If somebody didn't take a chance on me and let me sort of develop and mature, who knows if I'd be here, right? So we all need people to be patient with us, depending on our strengths and weaknesses. But like Danielle said, it's important that you see this person putting in the effort to make those changes. If they come in and they have weaknesses, you talk to them about it and they don't make any changes, that's where those critical conversations have to be ramped up to the point where this person has to either get with the program or they got to get out, right? And I think that type of sort of mentality in your office as a leader is great to have, because then people know you're not to be messed with. It doesn't mean you're a dictator. It just means you have standards and you hold people accountable to those standards. That's great stuff. Okay, so I have another question, and then we'll see if we have any more. But this has been really, really good stuff. So when you're on a Sunday, right? And I think a lot of people that are building teams, sometimes they don't take enough time on Sundays to prepare. What do you do on a Sunday to go into your week when it comes to all these preemptive conversations or topics that you want to discuss? Because leaders a lot of times they fly by the seat of their pants, and they're not really thinking into the future of what they're going to do with their crew. So what did you do on Sundays to prepare for your week based on the relationships and the conversations you wanted to have?
Okay, so I really like to plan my one-on-ones like ahead of time. But I look at the stats of the previous week. And so kind of like you said, you're looking at the behavior of people, you're looking at, the stats and like which people are probably, on the fence based on how long they've been here and everything. But I really take a look at my roll call, and, I call all of my leaders and I say, hey, like what happened last week? What's your goal coming up this week? And, we'll talk in the middle of the week to see like where you're at so far. Typically we talk every day, just because people are just in and out, and that's just very open, in my office. But I want to see like where each individual person is at. And that's gotten a little bit more difficult for me. Like I'm learning, as my office has grown, to keep up with everybody. So that's something that I'm still kind of getting used to and learning as well. But I go through everybody's goals emails. I have them send them to me on Sunday. So that way I can kind of follow up throughout the week, and I can look back at their goals and say, hey, like, and I write them down. Like, sometimes I get like a novel, but like I write down the gist of like what they want to be accomplishing in the week. So that way it's kind of like the same thing. It's like, hey, remember when you sent us goals email and you said that you wanted to do this and this and this? So how do you think that's going? How can I help you? How can I hold you accountable to what? What do you need from me? So that's kind of what I review on Sundays, and I get ready for, the class that's starting the following week. Hey, did you guys do your rehashes? Have you guys talked to your people? Some people were scheduled to start like 2 weeks ago, but then they had something happen and they're starting this week. Are we keeping up with them? Just kind of making sure my roll call is intact.
Nice. So yeah, guys, make sure every Sunday you're writing down. Again, you might have 2 people on your team. There's your roll call, and you're going over their goals, and you're planning out conversations. You're really going into, you're thinking about them and what they want to accomplish, and you're using their goals as conversation starters throughout the week, whether they're hitting them, whether they're not, what they're working on. And if every week your people realize like you're kind of all over it. I mean, not to the point where they feel like you're smothering them, but they know that they're going to have to answer to goals and things that they told you they're going to do. And that's a good relationship to have. Like, I liked having coaches that were going to be on me. I liked having coaches that held me accountable, where I couldn't just say one thing and just not do it. And so I think it's really important that you guys are the example of being prepared going into the week, not just about your goals, but really understanding and thinking about and talking to your people about their goals and then following up. So we got a couple of questions here, Danielle. One of them is, I think we get this question all the time. What qualities and characteristics in someone do you look for when building a team from the initial interview? So you're interviewing someone. What are some of the things you look for?
So honestly, anybody willing to learn, anybody who is, I guess not too sexy for the position, anybody willing to learn something, I am willing to teach them. Because it's really hard to tell from the initial interview, because they might be nervous. In my interview, I have no idea what came out of my mouth. I was, I was all kinds of nervous. I was a weirdo. So it's very, very hard to see or to say, what to look for in the initial interview, because you don't know if that's truly them. They're going to try to put their best foot forward, whether it comes out the way they want it or not. But if they, like, the main thing I look for, if they're willing to learn, then I'm willing to teach them.
Nice. That's great. So we got a question here. So you've had a conversation with your guy about his push week, which he or she has come to you saying they're ready, right? So 2 or 3 weeks have gone by with them getting close, but at the end of the week, they keep dropping the ball, and they've lost momentum, whether it's for one day or another. What conversation are you having with that person that has been trying to get into leadership, but they keep getting close and it's no cigar?
Okay, so it kind of sounds like it's a consistent thing, like towards the end of the week, they kind of drop the ball. So whatever day that happens, or whatever time of the day, if it's like a certain time of the day, whatever day or time that happens, like, get ahead of it and be like, listen, look at these stats, look at the past few weeks. This is where you always drop the ball, not this week.
Yep.
Whatever you did at the beginning of the week, that's exactly the heat that you have to bring today. Like, let's go. But like, just remind them, just be that accountability person to just always remind them, like, hey, this is where we've been at, not this week.
Yeah.
And then, paint the 2 paths for them. Be like, hey, if we accomplish this, this is where you're going to be. If not, you're going to be in the same spot. How much longer are you willing to be in the same spot? Do you think this is good for you? Yeah.
It also seems like when you have these people, I think setting some definitive dates are really important, right? When you say, hey, we got to get it done by this date. Sometimes it can sound intense, but it just kind of gets people in gear. And makes people kind of look at this like sink or swim. And I think when people have a date, it's like kind of like a diet. Like you want to lose a certain amount of weight by a certain day. People will push. You'll see people do things that normally they wouldn't when they realize there's like a timer on it. And I think that the timer in the entry level position is super important to start having that conversation with people if they're not getting to leadership quickly, saying, hey, like we like even in the early stage, I used to be like, hey, the goal is for you to get into leadership as soon as possible, but really no more than 4 to 6 weeks. And I would say that, like, if it's taking longer than 6 weeks, then we probably have an issue. And you might say, well, man, I don't want them to quit. Well, if they're not promoted in 6 weeks, like they probably shouldn't be doing our business. Like they're not making enough money. They're not growing. So I was okay having dates kind of set up on when they want to get promoted by. And listen, there's some people that you had to let go because they just couldn't hit it. And the more time you spent with these people that couldn't do it, the more time you weren't spending with people who were doing well. And you had to listen, you got to train a lot of people to find your leaders. It's not like everybody's going to become a leader. That's okay. So you got to be comfortable setting dates and having timeframes for people to accomplish things. And if they feel that and they're excited about it, you got to follow up with the coaching to help them achieve it. But at the end of the day, it's up to that person. All of you guys in this call became leaders because you made a decision and you put in the work and you got it done. So you can't lower the expectations of the people that are going to become leaders in your team. Okay, so we got a couple really good questions here. Let me get into it. So good morning. How do you know if a recruit isn't working out? Okay, I already asked that one, sorry. So what happens when you have to develop someone, but developing that person takes away from another person who needs development as well? How do you avoid losing both? And what would you do with someone who's a great salesperson, but is not fully invested into growing the leadership role? So let's start with the first one from JP. So what do you do when you're developing one person, but it takes away from another that also needs development? So how do you kind of manage your time there?
So I would create a schedule. Like I said, I had a really hard time, with time management, and finding a way to balance even my personal life and my people. So you want to make a schedule and you want to see what works for them, right? Okay, so I want to sit down with you. I want to go through all of this with you. But if you only have 2 people, I definitely put all of your time into both if you really see potential in both of them. But as you grow a larger team, you want to really be able to make a schedule, like get a planner. Like, I don't know how I ever survived in life without a planner. But commit to those times that you set out for your guys. So like if you set up a night, hey, we're going to go out tonight. Like we're going to go get tacos. We're going to go swashbuckle and we'll talk about this and that. And, but tomorrow night I'm with this guy, but like you have to commit and, nothing can stand in between that. And you have to actually, hold yourself accountable to showing up to those business dinners and the one-on-ones that you're investing in your time outside of the business. If that answered your question, I hope that.
For sure. No, like I think when you have a small team, I mean, you're not busy. You should be able to spend time with both and put time into both people. But I do know that as you grow your teams, you talk about having that roll call. I think one of the most important things you do on a Sunday is create a depth chart of your team. The depth chart is not about who's your leader and then who's your new person. The depth chart is just a ranking system where you look at your team, you're like, who's my best person? And sometimes your best person is their newest person. It's not the person that's been a leader on your team for 8 months or whatever. It can be your brand new person. And going back to the kind of like the cherry picking aspect of our business where the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your time with your top 20%. That's how you truly duplicate yourself, is by, really spending a lot of time developing people both in and outside of the business. So don't be afraid, guys, when you start building your crews, to cherry pick your special people and help delegate, create these relationships that are leaders who you guys can cross train. And there's going to be times where, a new person that needs help, it's just not worth your time. You're better off retraining a leader that really could be great and having somebody else in the office help you with your new guy. And you got to obviously have their back as well. And so I do think like depth chart of your team every Sunday, ranking your team, right? Not based on tenure, based on who you really see could be your best person. Because, Danielle, you got promoted to leadership in 8 days. And I'm sure when you got promoted to leadership, whoever was your leader was like, she's my best person. Like she's new, but she's my best person now. And so it's important, just like in sports, sometimes the rookie's the best player in the team, right? They don't have to be the veteran, and nothing against the veteran, but I always had to make sure that I was prioritizing my time with my people that were going to get the most from the business and get the most for themselves. What would you do for someone? We'll do like 1 or 2 more questions here. We're getting a lot here. What would you do for someone who's great in sales, but they're not fully invested into the leadership role of the business?
So I would just sit down with them and, I would ask them how they're doing. And then it just bring up different aspects of the business and be like, just get their perspective on how they're doing, because they may or may not even know that you have this opinion of them. So I would definitely like seek to understand, like, hey, how do you think you're doing, in the leadership aspect? And then they might say, well, I can improve, or whatever they say, make sure you ask them why, why do you think this? And then what are the facts that you have? And okay, so this is just what I see on my end. Whether you agree, disagree, this is just what I see. So, what are some things that, you think you can be improving on? And then you come up with the standards together, come up with goals that are tangible that you want to be seeing as they are stepping up as a leader, whether it's just like their presence is stronger inside of the meetings, whether they're speaking up more, their posture, their dress code, whatever it is, just, come up with a tangible goal.
I see someone that is just interested in sales, right? And they're maybe not interested in getting to leadership, or maybe they're not interested in management. I'm okay with it, right? I just have to make sure that person isn't ruffling any feathers. I have to make sure that person is not, walking around the office being negative. And there's been people who, they were great in sales, but they necessarily weren't, it wasn't the right time for them to get into leadership yet. Maybe they were still wanted to go out with their friends. Maybe they didn't want to take on more responsibility. And that's okay, because people kind of blossom differently. I didn't get to leadership until my 5th week. Danielle, 8 days. I was like my 5th week in the business when I finally got there. But I was doing the sales. I just wasn't working full weeks. I was kind of high maintenance. And if someone would have rushed me and said, hey, you got to get into leadership now, that probably would have been an issue for me, because I wasn't ready. So I think it's a fine line when someone's good at are they good at sales? Then yeah. If they're not good at sales and they don't want to become a leader, then they should leave the business, because there's no point in doing this. But when someone's good, they're setting the pace. I'm just talking to them about their bigger goals and what they want to accomplish. And if they tell me, hey, right now, the big goals don't align with the business, but I'm having fun, I'm liking what we're doing, I'm making money, and that's fine. Then I go, great. As long as, you understand that I'm going to be coaching people on leadership, and that doesn't, just get disrupted, then no problem. You let me know when you're ready to get into leadership. And then I kind of start poking fun at them a little bit. I'll throw little jabs here and there, but I don't want that person that's happy, that's having fun, to be pushed to become something they're not ready to become right away, right? So I think obviously every person's different, but you got to understand it. So, all right, guys, well, we are past the hour mark. Danielle, you got so many questions. We couldn't even get to all of them. So can you go to your first slide really quick to leave your information?
Yes.
So there's your number, guys, 336-473-2002, DD Smith 7931 @gmail. Please, guys, reach out. Danielle, thank you so much for sharing an hour with us this morning. We love these calls. I always learn so much. I always run these topics right after with my guys, and we really appreciate you giving the time. Any last words of advice for the guys?
Just keep networking. Keep networking. That's really all I have. Network about your individual situations, because everything is different. Don't try to take one thing that works with somebody into another person, because situations are different. And just keep networking. And thank you so much for having me on this call. I've really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
For sure. Well, we've enjoyed it. You crushed it. You did a great job. Everybody, next week we got Bud speaking at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. And please, guys, reach out to Danielle if you have any follow-up questions. She's definitely will be available to run any extra calls for you guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. Thanks, Danielle.